Hello. Happy Motivational Monday. Thank you for joining me today. I'm realizing I have not turned my lights on. Might want to do that. There. I hope everyone had a good weekend. It is raining here slightly, so you may hear a little bit of noise in the background. Today is a little bit of a special session. I just want to make sure I'm going live here on the other end. If you're joining me and you can see me in the glareness of my lights, but more importantly, if you can see and hear me, just give me a thumbs up or make a comment so I know that you're seeing me. It looks like I am live on the other end. So for those of you who are joining me today, I have probably done this session more times than any other session I've ever done. But the reality is there's new people using vibration plates all the time. Or maybe you're introducing your vibration plate to someone in your family or your friend or your network. And just like going to the gym and exercising, we all have different goals. We're all dealing with a different body. So it's no surprise that for some, it's a little confusing getting started on a vibration plate, because if you're not an exercise guru now, and even if you are an exercise guru, it's a different thing. So you're not really sure how to apply the tool to necessarily get the results that you're looking for. I just want to see a little bit of feedback here from someone. Can't post messages to some channels. Close. Okay, if you are seeing me or hearing me, somebody make a comment. I see there's 4 of you there right now. I'm hoping, I don't want to ramble and not know that someone's, are you there? You're seeing that on the other end. Okay. And I'm putting a few things in comments for you guys now. Thank you, Dolores. It's so nice to see you, and thanks for letting me know. Unless you can't hear me or see me, let me know. But I'm going to get into a bit of a spiel, and I've just dropped a few links in the comments. The first one is related to a blog that I did last year, I believe, for Life Pro, and it's been a useful tool for some clients. If you're trying to explain to your therapist or your doctor about your vibration plate, sometimes there's a disconnect in A, what it is, and B, how it's going to help you. So there's a really good article there, a couple pages with some related links. It also talks a little bit about some of the stigmas out there, because some people think vibration machines are a harmful thing, and they are absolutely not. I've also posted my contraindications. So why I say my contraindications, there really are very few contraindications to a vibration machine, because all a vibration machine is an exercise tool. So, but there are, due to similar terminology, there's some misassociations out there. So I want you to take a close look at that. I've also dropped a link. It is Mother's Day coming up next weekend. And for those of you that are celebrating, Life Pro has 15% off some really cool items. Whether you are shopping for your mom, your grandma, your aunt, your sister, or yourself. I like shopping for myself. There's some really good deals you should be checking out there. So I want to go over a few things today. And for those of you that are using a plate now, you may not necessarily agree with some of the ways that I recommend, and I use the word recommend. Just like exercise, there is no perfect way for everyone to work out. Durations are going to vary, goals are going to vary, body types are going to vary, and discipline's going to vary. So all a vibration machine is, before I get into a little bit of showing here, a vibration machine is simply an environment. It's an environment that makes floor-based exercise positions and stretches easier and less impactful on the body. It accelerates the effects of that traditional exercise position. Therefore, you can get more benefit in less time. That's kind of the premise. And I've got a couple of different Life Pro plates here today. There is no perfect plate for every person, for every application. It's hard when you're looking online because these plates have been in the consumer world online a little bit, the better part of a decade, I would suspect now. And there's hundreds and hundreds of different machines, brands. Life Pro within their own suite of vibration machines has done a really good job of offering not only some variety, but some added features for those of you that are looking for them. So I want to get into the basics of vibration machines, and I want to make it really clear that it's understanding not the science, but kind of the discipline or the language behind these plates, and it's going to make it a lot easier for you to decide which model or which plate might be better for what your overall goals are. So the one I'm working on right now is my favorite Life Pro model. This is the Rumblex 4D Plus. The other one that I have over here is the Waver Mini, and just visually you can see right off the bat there's a difference in size. I want to make sure that I'm streaming okay on the other end, that I'm still coming through. Okay. I will get to questions, and I want to give you guys lots of opportunities to blast me today because you're all unique. But the reason I'm using the Rumblex today is the first thing I want to talk about is plane of movement. So out of all the machines out there in the vibration machine world, they move in different ways. Some of them move in multiple ways. Some of the models with Life Pro, of course, for those of you that own any of the Rumblex, or if you own a Hovert or a turbo model, you know that when you have multiple movements, you can combine those movements. And I've specialized in using the machines for 16 years. Most people do not have the training experience and background that I do. And we didn't know what we didn't know. So, if you bought a plate believing that this type of movement or this speed setting was best for your condition, the good news is that the benefits are kind of universal, but I do want you to understand what the settings and the movement types are, which are simply to a degree, a way to customize for you and your needs. So the first movement, which is the most foundational, the most functional, and the most researched, is oscillating. Now, the biggest problem right off the gate in the vibration machine world is there's a lot of terms that sometimes mean the same thing. So a lot of the online marketing in this type of movement, the movement to exaggerate, I've got it on the slowest speed. If I'm putting my feet really, really wide in oscillating, you move more. If you put your feet closer, you move less. There's a reason I'm showing you that. I'm going to get into that in more detail. But oscillating mimics how we walk. That's why it's the most functional. Your body is forced in a standing position. If you're able to stand, I would encourage you to join me at this point. When you're joining me, the first tip is bending your knees slightly, leaving them undone. The taller you stand, the more you're going to feel it in your head and your voice. You'll hear it. Bend the knees just slightly. Let those natural shock absorbers kick in. If you're dealing with a medical concern, you're scared to death, you're recovering from an injury or surgery, you can use your plate seated and take the body weight out of the equation. For those of you that are joining me standing, oscillating, it kind of feels like everything's jiggling all over the place. But right now you're moving back and forth. Micro movements are moving your body back and forth. And while you're standing on the plate, it's forcing your body to stabilize. I would like you to focus on things like good posture, good breathing. If you're feeling it too much in the head, bend those knees. The body's always trying to find a way to cheat. If you're finding the movement is too strong or too intense, the most undiscussed thing in the vibration machine world, and the thing that you should understand the most, is a term called amplitude. Amplitude is this. You're changing the amplitude or the amount of movement by the position of your feet. This is only applicable in oscillating movement where you're moving like a teeter-totter. What I would prefer if you're just starting out, if you're out of shape, you're just getting started again, I want you to always think functional. For feel good, just getting started, I want you functional, and functional means no more than hip width apart. When you're on the ground walking, we don't walk with our legs wider than our hips, not naturally anyways, and we don't walk with them right close together. Sometimes we shuffle because our balance and those type of things aren't good, But normally when you're standing on the floor, your feet are planted directly under your hips. So all the machine is an environment that makes standing on the floor offer a little bit more to your body. So keep those feet no more than hip width apart. If you're finding at any time, any speed, any preset program, it's just too crazy and too strong for you, you are always in control. Bring your feet closer to the center. So as a trainer that focuses a lot on functional, oscillating is my fave. It's least invasive on the head. Not that that is harmful, but it does take some getting used to, especially if you have sensitivities in the head and the neck. You're prone to migraines, things like that. The other thing about oscillating movement is it also holds the most research. This is where it all started. This movement style has been around forever, and the vast majority of medical grade equipment out there is strictly oscillating. A lot of the multi-movements and the other movements I'll get into next are more associated with the consumer market. They are features and add-ons that came to be after the medical industry wasn't the only provider of these machines. Now, the next movement I want to talk about is pulsation, or in the scientific world, because it also has some research, is vertical. Vertical is very, very different in its feeling. If you have a rumblex and you're joining me today, pulsation is the next movement out of your basic start, which is, looks like little waves, and it's just like a little bit of a buzz tickle. You don't really feel it up through the head. It's a very gentle stimulation. This is great for things like neuropathy, if you're dealing with poor balance, but it's not as effective long-term as incorporating the oscillating movement. Pulsation in the consumer world is kind of a consumer version of what's called lineal or vertical plates. And the biggest difference between a commercial medical grade $10,000 vertical machine and what your pulsation offers is not only cost, but the term I mentioned earlier in oscillating, which is amplitude, how much you're moving up and down. In pulsation, it's millimeters, like half a millimeter. And it doesn't really matter how you stand on the plate. The amplitude or the amount of movement doesn't vary. The whole surface of the plate, even though you can't see it, is moving like this. With oscillating, you're in control based on where that foot position is. So it's very important to understand when I hammer you about foot placement and feet closer, that's always related to amplitude in oscillating movement. Pulsation is not better for this or that. It's really boils down to a preference and what feels good for you. What I can say, and I'm going to sit down for a second, a lot of my clients that are dealing with neuropathy, swelling in the lower extremities, that suffer from fatigue and can't stand for long periods or can't stand at all, pulsation is a very nice setting to kind of get things going, get some sensation in the feet. If you are dealing with neuropathy, usually, we're also thinking about bone density and those types of things. And bone density is more of a long-term gain, and it's not a setting. It's not a type of movement. It's bearing your weight. That's how we build our bones. So we want to work towards that. But until you're ready, the more sensation and the more improvement that you can get in your feet, the better your balance is going to be. And when you're working on bone density, or if you're dealing with osteoporosis, usually it's the falls and the stability, those type of things. And a vibration plate, the first thing that is going to improve if you're a new user is your balance. So just by getting some sensation going in the feet, in the oscillating movement, your body's always stabilizing. So the balance picks up very, very quickly. Very, very few plates in today's world are just vertical. There are some big brands out there that I am certified with as a trainer. I will not mention them today, but you're looking at a $6,000 to $15,000 investment. Vertical is not better than oscillating. Oscillating is not better than vertical. The people selling these machines and many of the researchers will argue with me, but I have been using the best of both side by side for 15 years, and I can assure you it all boils down to your personal preference. If you don't like how it feels, you're not going to do it anyways. So vertical, you love it or you hate it. In my opinion, if you were exposed to a true medical grade vibration plate, in pulsation, as I mentioned, you're moving about 0.5 millimeter in distance. My commercial grade plates put upwards of 4 millimeters. They're not pleasant feeling and they take some getting used to. They're very loud. They take up a lot of floor space, and I would consider them more of a commercial grade piece of equipment, something that you're exposing, high volume traffic in a gym to. They're not everybody's cup of tea in a home environment. And Life Pro incorporates pulsation as a variation. And as far as bang for your buck goes, you're getting a lot more value with different movements and variety. If you're starting out in a Rumblex, then trying to seek something. The turbo model also offers oscillating and vertical as a movement. Okay, I'm going to move on to the last movement. The last movement is lateral. So what is lateral? Lateral is, let me see here. Lateral, like the word, the whole surface of the plate now is moving this way. There is no vertical movement upwards whatsoever. Lateral really doesn't have a ton of scientific study behind it. The reality is science doesn't study everything. Science is very expensive. To get a true study done takes a lot of time, a lot of resources, and a lot of follow-up. And quite honestly, with natural alternatives and doing things that are let's say, traditional, pharmaceutical, whatever the word is, the research just isn't going that way. So lateral is an alternative that came to be with many of the manufacturers, Life Pro leading the way in many senses that way. But it's just a variation. One of the coolest things about having other motions isn't because they're better or more effective, but it depends on you. It gives you more ways to program your machine for what suits your level of comfort for the moment in time. And if you're dealing with a chronic issue, sometimes having different types of movement is all you need to mix things up a little bit, especially if you're unable to stand for long periods and you're restricted to seated. This is going to give you a different way to move the legs, get the circulation and the lymph going, and it really depends on what feels good to you. So this is the third movement in the Rumblex series. This is a motion that Life Pro offers on some of its plates. If you have the Hovert model, you have oscillating and lateral. So again, all of Life Pro's models offer oscillating, which is the foundational, functional, most researched, and all that I train in. But if you are dealing with one of the multi-machines, you may have a pulsation or lateral as a movement type. And that's one of the first things when you're looking online. It's so confusing because a lot of the listings, Life Pro does a really good job of not only outlining their specifications, but the features that their machines offer. But many don't even state what they do. You're looking at a machine and it says 1 to 100 speeds, but that's all that it says. And sometimes you don't realize until you get the thing home that it moves differently than what you saw Debbie doing on camera. So if it's not clearly outlined and you're curious, make sure, I recommend for anyone considering a vibration plate, you have the minimum of oscillating movement and explore others. If you find this is something that you develop an interest in and you want to upgrade and get more features, but bare minimum, all of my coaching is in basic and in that basic oscillating movement because it's going to offer you the most benefit and the most function. So we're going to get back to that because I want to do a bit more talking. Oscillating has a little bit more understanding to be had because of the amplitude. So again, as I stated, amplitude in oscillating is how close or how far apart your feet are. The next set of questions we're going to move on to is things while you're on the machine. I talked about the different types of movements, and one thing I want to mention, especially if you're trying to decide what is the best machine for you, impossible question to answer, but the more movement types that your machine has, the more motors it will have. So each way the machine moves requires a different motor. So if you're looking for something light and portable to throw into the RV for the summer, I would look at the Waver or the Mini and stick with just oscillating. The less motors you have, the lighter and the more potentially compact the machine's going to be. If you want all the bells, all the whistles, all the movements, you're probably looking at a 40 to 50 pound machine, and that's just the way it's going to be. You're not going to get all of the features that a Rumblex machine offers into something that's 12 by 12 inches. It's just engineering requires a little bit of space. Okay, so as I mentioned, when you're starting on the machine, I've covered the whole, you're in control, but make sure those knees are locked. Another thing I want to get back to is good posture. So we're not slouching like we're sitting at our desk. We're standing tall, shoulders are back. You want to keep that core engaged. You can do more than just stand on a vibration machine. This may be a foreign concept to some of you. But as I said earlier, anything that you do on the floor, and what you'll notice when we talk about the bending of the knees, if you're able and willing to bend deeper and start progressing into more of a squat, you don't even feel it up past the hips. Those quads and those glutes are forced now just by changing the angle of your position. So if your goals are more fitness oriented, you want to lose weight, you want to tone and get into those little shorty shorts, you need to do the positions associated with that. The machine is not going to do all the work for you. You can stand there and go longer and longer, and you can tell me, oh yeah, I'm losing weight, I'm getting results. Many people do. But for those of you that are just getting started out, I don't want to sell you on something you're not going to get. You will get some benefits, but depending on the body that you're starting with, you're going to hit a wall at some point. Going longer and longer and longer is not the reason you got this miracle workout machine. It was to save time and be more effective. If you're dealing with chronic issues, the more we can reduce the time that you spend exercising, the less impact and trouble with the joints. So if you're looking at bone density and all those other things I was talking about earlier, this is good for you too. But you're going to fatigue a lot faster on a vibration machine than you are on the floor because of those micro movements. So again, it's just an environment. And I would recommend, if you're not an exercise guru now, keep the dynamic out of the dynamic movement. You don't need to be moving up and down. We'll get to that in a later session or other sessions. Today is just about getting started, and your technique is going to be better if you're not trying to get a cardio workout at the same time. Just focus on the basics. The more you can start with good solid basics and have that as your foundation moving forward, especially if you're not an exercise guru now, the more effective your time and effort's going to be on this plate. The very last thing I want to talk about relative to all different types of movements are speeds. Speeds and levels. So right now I am on speed 1. The Rumblex offers speeds of up to 60. And for any of you that have worked with me in the past or seen any of my sessions, I always recommend starting at a mid to higher speed. And a lot of people are confused. It contradicts what pretty much any company, including Life Pro, says. And it's hard because, as I said, when there's been an industry out there for 20 years saying one thing, it's hard. Now we know better, we know different. And what we know about vibration machines, particular to oscillating, in the slow ranges, the low speeds, they're very choppy, they're very wobbly, they're very much like being on a Bosu ball. And many of us want to improve our balance and our stability. But if you are prone to falls or you're dealing with a compromised body, it might be a little bit too choppy and jarring to start with. And what I recommend is modifying. You can always modify how you use a plate. I don't care what kind of surgery you've had. There's always a way that you can use your plate with modifications. The first modification is bringing your feet closer to the center. By doing this, you will reduce the amount of movement and the amount of impact, which will facilitate and allow you to get to those mid and high speeds I'm always talking about. So now I'm going to bring mine up to like speed 30, which is mid in a range of speed. So if you have a machine that goes 1 to 100, your mid range is like 50 to 60. I always speak ranges because there's no definitive number for everybody. It's like asking me, how many Advil should I take each day to keep my headache away? Everybody's going to be different. Some people can't even take Advil. So, it very much is something I want you to experiment, whether you're standing or sitting. You can play and experiment with the speeds, your foot position, What it's going to boil down to is a level of comfort for you personally and what you're doing. If you're just standing here and you want to get some energy, this might be okay. But if you want to do a squat, you're probably going to need to be wider. And you're going to find those mid speeds, because you're going faster, are more challenging. So you will fatigue faster as well. The mid speeds tend to be a little smoother, a little less choppy. As we get into the higher end, if you find at any time on the mid to high speeds, like you're having to fight or resist the machine just to stay stable on it, it's usually a clue that you're standing too wide for what your body's ready for. So when you're using an oscillating movement, there's two factors. There's your speed and the position of your feet. That's going to create an overall intensity in what you're feeling on your body. And, our initial reaction is to slow it down because it's just too much. But bring your feet a little closer. Make that your first adjustment. And if you're showing someone a plate for the first time, start them with their feet closer to the center. Get up to more of a mid-speed range and just let them see how it feels there. The number one reason in my experience people have a poor experience with a vibration machine is they stand really wide, they lock up their legs, and they stand there for 10 minutes because that's how long the machine is preset for. Well, just because you have a lifetime membership at the gym because you decided to get moving this summer, are you going every day, all day? Like, you got to use common sense. So if you're dealing with an inactive body, a deficient body, I do not recommend going the max time, which is my next point. Go figure. So Debbie, how long can I use my vibration plate for? This is a very common question, not just from new users, but just new users, I'm going to say. Very often after you've started using your vibration plate, it makes you feel better. Exercise does that. Moving gets your lymph and your circulation going. A lot of people experience reduced pain, anxiety, tension. So no wonder you want to be on the thing all day long. I don't like to put limits on time, but I will give you some parameters and some guidelines to follow. Just like going to the gym, I can't tell you how many reps and how much weight you're going to need to lift to get biceps. It's going to be different for everybody. Same with the vibration machine. So what I do recommend, if you're using your plate for feel good, maybe you're dealing with a chronic pain condition or swelling, or you just sit at your desk too much and you just want to mix things up, I recommend for feel good and therapeutic applications, shorter sessions more frequently. I do have users that are using their machine 5 to 10 times a day starting out, but they're using it for a minute or two at a time to get some energy, to get better balance, to facilitate a better lifestyle throughout the day. If you are doing exercise and you are truly putting some effort into it and applying yourself, you should get to a point in any one exercise that you are fatiguing within about a minute. So what I mean by that is if you're doing squats at the gym now and you have been for 20 years, you might find a minute is different and challenging, but the goal isn't to go 5-10 minutes per position. I want you fatiguing within a minute. And if that means that you're someone that's fit and conditioned now, maybe that means, making it harder. Maybe you're ready for some dynamic movement. Maybe you're going to hold some click weights in your hand to make your mass heavier. If you're exercising regularly at the gym, you probably have some good technique, and the machine is just going to increase the effectiveness of that exercise in less time, but you got to make sure that you're challenging yourself. And then the reason I always speak in levels with the speeds ranges rather, is I don't want you being stuck on any one number. So I prefer, for both the feel good and the fitness, you tend to fall into your, you get your 5-6 moves that you're really good at or you really enjoy doing because they offer what you need. You don't need to change your exercises. You can certainly progress and try new things, but if you're in a routine, especially if this is of a feel good or a therapeutic approach, you can just mix up the speed every week. So if you've been doing, just standing there to get some lymph a few times throughout your day to because you sit too much or you get stiff, and you've been doing all of your stuff at, let's say, speed 30, maybe next week do it at 35 or 40 or drop it down to 25. So the beauty of this whole range and these increments of speeds is you can challenge the body. You can mix it up. The body gets used to anything after a period of time. So you want to make sure if you're not changing up the exercise positions, or you're in a habit and you like them and you just don't want to, you can change your speeds. You can change your foot placement. And it doesn't mean harder or longer. Just by changing it, the body's got to adjust and get used to what that is. And it keeps the changes going and stops you from getting stagnant, if you will. And then, so again, for feel good and fitness, maybe you're doing a combination of both. I do recommend, if you're just starting out, probably a couple of sessions is okay. Keep it to about 5-6 minutes per session, especially if you're dealing with chronic issues. You can always do a little bit more. When I said this was a common question with newbies and just newbies, as I said, when first time you use it, you might have been okay. 10 minutes is great, no problem. But over-exercise presents differently in everyone, and that's the biggest risk you're going to run with a vibration machine. You're not going to have any concerns, but if you over-exercise and you're not an exerciser now, it happens quick on this, and you may not realize why your legs are jello the next day. Or if you're really, really tired and you just feel like you can't get moving, you don't want to overdo it. I would rather you start conservatively, which means more frequently in short sessions, especially if it's feel good or therapeutic. If it's for fitness and you've already hit the gym today and done a whole bunch of stuff, maybe you do some warm up and some recovery, but you could also do some fitness on it. If you're doing fitness on it, make sure you're complementing and not overdoing in complement with other activities. So if you had a big leg day at the gym, well, maybe just come home and do some upper body and some core work if you want to do fitness. It's not about adding another whole half hour to the routine that you're already doing. The machine is designed to enhance and complement anything that you're doing out there, even if it's the gym. So a lot of the feel-good uses are things like, maybe you're using it for 15 minutes before you get into your sauna, or maybe you're using it for 2 to 3 minutes after, just to help expedite some detox and keep things moving. One of the things I want to shift to now before I get to questions, and I'm expecting a few today, what do I expect after? I know a few of you right now are going, well, what about this and what about that? One of the biggest things, and it's not probably the most important thing, but I want to bring it up because it's probably the number one new user question I get, and any of you that are using a machine now are going to go, oh yeah, I remember that, is sometimes you get a little bit of an itchiness or pins and needles, like your feet and your legs are falling asleep. Sometimes it can be severe where you feel like you're having an allergic reaction and your skin's all red, and some people I've seen actually develop hives. Sometimes with medical conditions, an increase in circulation and lymphatic movement is an increased histamine response. So that's a rare thing. But for the average person, it's not uncommon to feel a little itchy or a little bit of a pins and needles sensation. And that's because you have gotten a whole bunch of lymph and a whole bunch of circulation going. I will say with continued regular use, it's usually going to dissipate within a week or two. So for those of you that have stopped or didn't use your vibration machine again, or don't like using it because it just makes you so darn itchy, A, don't do it for so long. B, bring your feet closer together. A lot of times the itchiness or the tingling is heightened because you're overdoing it in the first place. So follow the conservative approach. Do a couple of sessions. See how everybody assimilates a little bit differently. If you fatigue easily or you're dealing with a recovery situation, sit and you can get a little bit more time in a seated position just from a feel-good perspective, and save the wind that you do have for the standing positions and the strength, but you can continue seated. So what can you expect after this? The itch thing was down in my list, but I had a question this morning on it, so I thought I had to mention that first. It is not uncommon, and if you don't feel an itch, it's not saying everyone does. The other thing that I'll mention for my regular users, if you've ever taken a break, or you got on holidays, or you just got into other things and you're returning to your vibration plate, that itchiness or tingly feeling is also the number one thing that you'll notice when you return. Maybe not to the same severity, but a lot of people go, oh yeah, I forgot about that itchiness. Some people love it. It feels great. If you're dealing with lack of sensation and you've got sluggish lymph and you're dealing with like lymphedema or something, it feels great to have that sensation. And you may even notice it after the session, even later in bed. A lot of people will mention to me, it felt like my legs were crawling or my legs were still tingling. I could feel the blood flow. Those are all newbie things. Your body's more aware. You've increased your body's capacity. Again, within about a week, maybe 2 of regular use, those things will dissipate. Other things on my list. You might feel a little winded. You might feel like you did a workout. A lot of people get a little bit of sweat going, but how is that possible? Because there's this rumor out there that you can't get cardio with vibration plate exercise. Depends what you mean by cardio. Cardio is this, one of those terms, and all the trainers out there are going to hate me. Cardio is this, mentally, to most of us. We're running on a treadmill, or we're doing activity. Cardio, to me, is cardiovascular system. We've increased our blood flow. We've increased our circulation. We've increased our oxygen distribution. And if you're not in great shape, and you haven't exercised muscles in a long time, guess what? You start huffing and puffing. And you start raising your body temperature and you start feeling warmer. And if you're using your red lights and your other therapies, you're going to feel it even more. And if you're like me and you're going through menopause and hot flashes and those type of things, they're all common on a vibration plate because we're increasing your activity levels. So if you're feeling winded on a vibration plate, guess what? Number one reason, it's what every cardiac person, if you're having any kind of cardiac issues, if you had a stroke, if you had a heart attack, if you had a bypass, if you had a heart replacement, vibration machines, because they can offer so much exercise capacity in such a short period, it's the number one reason you should be using them, because you don't have wind. And this is a really good way to not only reserve the wind that you do have, but to give you energy. So a lot of times a short session for some of my chronic clients is a minute or 2 before they head out the door before their day, just to give them energy and boost the metabolism. So there's a lot of ways you can use your machine in short, purposeful sessions. It's not always a workout. And if you can be consistent with that, the rest of it is so much easier to adhere with. What else do we feel? I'm going to sit and I'm going to look at you. And I'm going to turn some lights off because I feel completely braided here. Hang on. The lights get a little warm. What else do we feel? Ooh, you might feel lighter. Sometimes I feel, some people say I feel like light and fluffy, or I feel like I'm floating. You know, your body's been moving back and forth, you know, hundreds of times in what you would normally experience walking across the floor. So as things, especially toxins and blood and lymph, especially you got heavy legs, and things get moving and dispersed throughout your system, it's not uncommon to feel a bit light and fluffy, as I like to describe it. Another big side benefit, I'm not going to call any of these bad things because they're all good, and there's research to support this, is you may notice an increase in your pee and your poop, an increase in urinary movement, and an increase, if you're having constipation issues, you are going to love your vibration machine. And if you are dealing with chronic issues, it's not uncommon. I'm going to warn you right now, because most people, even though you've listened to Debbie and I know you know what you're supposed to do, it feels so darn good. It's not uncommon to just go 10 minutes because it feels great the first time and you spent money on it, so you're excited. But expect a good clean out the next day. Very, very calm, maybe even later that day or that evening. Consistent use is going to keep you regular. For those of you that are standing on the machine going, Debbie, it makes me pee every time that I'm on it. Same reason. You've got muscles in there that are firing and expanding and contracting. So eventually it will improve. There's all kinds of sessions that I've done specific to that. If range of motion allows, you can even sit on the darn thing. But try taking a pee before your session. If it makes you pee throughout your session, that's good. You know, if it is an area of weakness for some of my new moms, or you've had some surgery down there where, you know, you're having leakage problems, do some Kegels while you're standing on the machine. You're probably supposed to be doing them anyways, so do them on your machine. What else? It's very, very common, especially if you have babies. If you have babies that are constipated or little kids, that's another whole session. I deal with kids as young as 6 months Yes, I do. I've got the experience. And if you're a mom and your kid hasn't pooped in 5, 6, 7 days, and just having them sit on your lap while you do this can alleviate that, you're going to want to know more too. So it's just because you're moving and lymph's going in circulation. It's not science. It's simple common sense. Breakout. Detoxification occurs, of course, when we're moving our circulation. We're moving our blood. We're getting into shape. So, detoxification is a natural side benefit of vibration machines. And everybody's a little different. For me, when I'm eating lots of crap or doing things I shouldn't be to my body, I always notice it in my face and kind of between the chest and in the back. The face and the chest, your body's expelling toxins, and you're sweating if you're pushing yourself. So make sure you're hydrated. Very, very common. Make sure you're giving your body, nutrients to support that activity as well. When we detoxify, your body's taking some of the good with the bad. So make sure that you're not in bad shape to begin with. And if you are, you know what I'm talking about. Go for something green instead of the fries on the side once in a while. It doesn't mean that you have to start a whole diet plan, but just start making smart choices. And hydration is a really good way to start that. And the reason that the face breaks out a little bit more, sometimes more prominently than other areas, the skin on our face replaces itself and rejuvenates quicker than other areas of our body. So sometimes it's easier for our body because it knows it's getting, it gets a little bit more attention that way. So it's not uncommon to see a bit of a breakout there or there. So I will warn, because it's wedding season, I'm going to warn my brides that have a vibration machine, that haven't had a relationship with it because you're so busy doing other things. Don't get on your machine a week before your wedding or before you need to be in a picture and start trying to make up for lost time. It's really common that you'll have a breakout. That's just my girly tip there. And last but not least, fatigue and better sleep. I put them on the same line because they're kind of similar, but they're different. If you have overdone it and you continually overdo your vibration machine, fatigue is kind of one of those common things if you're over exercising. So please pay attention to that. If you have fatigue, a real short 1-2 minute thing is the best way to start building that up. If you do want to do a good workout and you're prone to fatigue, leave the workout till later in the day when you don't have to be productive and go to work and things like that. So that might not be what you want to hear. If you're an exercise person and you like to do your thing in the morning, I'm not saying don't use your vibration plate, but maybe break it up a little bit. If you're chronically fatigued throughout the day and you're doing a lot of exercise in the morning, sometimes you're depleting maybe the reserves that you do have. And you need to look at maybe into some of the root causes of where that fatigue is coming from. The better sleep. So sometimes I want you to be tired, but sometimes you're so darn tired, it doesn't mean you're actually sleeping. Can anyone associate with that? The number one thing I hear after probably the number 3 thing. The number one thing I hear after people have had a good shake is the itchiness. The number 2 thing is a good poop. The number 3 thing is I slept like a baby. Now, maybe it's because you're exercising for the first time. Maybe it's because you had a really good poop. There's lots of different reasons that you sleep better, but all in all, my regular users, even if they're dealing with diagnosed things like sleep apnea or, there's all kinds of different things out there. I've had more of my clients get off their sleep machines. I'm not suggesting you do that, but if you have a vibration plate, and you're not using it regularly and you're not an exercise guru, 15 to 20 minutes before you go to bed, even just a few minutes to get the lymph going, relax, get rid of what the day has presented to you. If you're not sleeping because you have like tension headaches and backaches and things like that, the machine's going to help you anyways. Getting into using it regularly is hopefully not only going to get you to sleep, but give you better quality sleep. Many of you get to sleep, but you're waking up 5 and 6 times because of the pee. And do you see how all of this is starting to tie back to use your vibration machine for everything because it just makes your life better? So a lot of the things as you're getting started as a newbie, I'm sorry if, I also hear that because of the increased peeing, because Debbie made me start my vibration machine, I didn't sleep so good last night. So, these things will normalize with continued use, and you're going to be feeling and moving a lot better if you stick with it consistently. And it doesn't need to be a big old workout. So the only other thing I didn't cover today, because it's totally a session in itself, is getting started on a vibration machine for the first time. If you are in a post-surgery or injury situation, because it's such a huge topic on its own, I will say if you are a brand new user to using a vibration machine and you're using it for the first time in a post-surgery or surgery situation, there's a fear factor that isn't as prominent with existing users. If you've been using your machine for a long time and all of a sudden you're in a surgery or an injury situation and your doctor or therapist says, well, you shouldn't use your vibration machine, you're like, yeah, right. Honest to God, most of my clients understand how to modify, how to use it. But your doctor, if they're not super familiar, the responsible answer is not to use the vibration machine. This is where I talk about modifications. So if you've just broken your arm, no, you probably shouldn't be doing push-ups on the machine, but maybe seated could still keep the legs going. Maybe standing if you're not feeling the stimulation. I have ladies that have liposurgery for medical conditions, not for vanity reasons, although you can get the same surgery in both worlds, that are on the machine the next day just to stop mitigation of scar tissue development. But it takes experience and a guidance tan. So pay attention to the sessions here. I am not saying use your vibration machine right after surgery or injury. I am saying with modifications and proper guidance, in all likelihood, there's probably something you can benefit from using it. But there are just, anytime you're looking for any of these sessions, you guys need to self-serve a bit. There's hundreds of hours, thousands of hours between Amber and myself. And I see a lot of questions on the VIP page group as it grows that say, well, how do I get started on my vibration plate? Go into the videos and search it, and you'll probably find 20 examples. How do I use a vibration machine after surgery? You know, I don't always get to the answers right away, and I'd rather you start with some guidance versus just, you know, I only started using it because nobody got back to me on the Life Pro page. The answers are there, but there's been so much content on this page, good content, that sometimes it's hard to navigate with just the way that Facebook allows you to organize. So you can go into the main or the VIP group and search a topic in the video, and 9 times out of 10, you'll find something. If you're watching this after the fact and you have questions specific to today, I want you to tag at Debbie with a Y, and I will happily answer those. For those of you that are here, there's 12 of you joining today. That's my favorite and my most lucky number. I want to hear what questions you have. Hello, Dolores. I do that to you all the time. Dolores started with the Rhythm, which is an oscillating side platform with handles. And after understanding the machines, I upgraded to the Rumblex Plus. After back, hip, and knee surgery, I'll appreciate having the Rhythm. The Rhythm is the one model that has handles. Balance is one of the biggest things that improves. So a lot of the machines nowadays don't even have handles, whereas if you looked at what was selling 10 years ago, they all had these handle designs. And again, there's never the perfect machine for every situation. I've been speaking with Dolores privately on a consultation basis, and I'm excited that she has both plates, because now I can put them in 2 places in her home and nag her more and make sure that she's getting more recovery done. But if you are in a post-surgery situation, typically seated is okay depending on where the surgery was. And the handles are a nice way to get standing it or hang on to something. You can use a chair back. I've done lots of different situations on that. Facebook fan says, I love both of these platforms. I'm a Rumblex fan, but the smaller one for my mother. Awesome. My mom has the mini as well. And again, it really does, you know, when people say, well, what machine should I get for my cancer recovery? Or what machine should I get for my weight loss? It's not a what machine for what condition. It's you personally, where you're putting it, and of course your budget. I mean, let's be realistic. I'd rather you start with a Waver Mini than not have a machine at all, if that's what budget or your healthcare plan or however you're paying for this goes, because there's still a world of benefit. You know, like a sport, you know, if your kid's into like mountain biking or something like that, you're not going and buying them a 5,000 to 10,000 Marin mountain bike right off the bat. You're probably going to your local, what's in the States, the big 5, or, you know, Nevada Bob's or wherever your sporting goods store, and you're starting them with an entry-level bike. So, you know, many people start with a Waver, and, you know, if a year down the road you're using it and everybody in your family has grown to love this thing, and, you know, it might justify getting into a Waver. If budget is less of a concern and you've done a bit of research and you know what you want, you know, a Rumblex or one of the bigger models is a bit more ideal if you have a dedicated space, you know where you're going to be putting it. They do have wheels. So as long as your range of motion and your body allows, any of the platforms are mobile. Some of my commercial devices are like 200 plus pounds. You're not picking them up and moving them around. But if you do find, you're specifically going to be moving it around regularly, you want it by the bed in the morning and you're moving it into the kitchen during the day or something, and you're on your own and you need a little bit of help, I would recommend going with the Waver Mini or the Waver, just because they're a little bit lighter due to just having the one movement style. Dolores, definitely for a pee and a good poo is a good thing. Yes, for those of you that do not have these issues, you're probably looking at me, why is she talking about this? But for those of you that do deal with these issues, it's worth the investment simply just for that aspect. And then Dolores says, yes, detoxification. A little off topic, but after back fusions or hardware, joint replacements, so important to walk oscillation would be good, right? Also, can infrared therapy be used? Anytime that you've had hardware, I don't care where, anything, whether it's like metal hardware, plastic hardware, you had bone grafts, there's lots of different ways that the body has, I'm going to call it, been invaded and exposed to trauma. But what I will say with artificial joints, clips, pins, fusions, like Dolores is talking about, when the vibration travels through those areas, you might feel them, not in a bad way. But because they're not bone or tissue, they feel differently. You can feel the tissues around the joint replacement. And there's been a lot of trauma to that area. A lot of the muscles are weak and healing. So it's actually a good thing to expedite healing. But it really does boil down to comfort and when you are to bear weight. So when you can do standing exercises or certain positions that may affect that area of surgery, Dolores, you want to make sure that it's appropriate at this stage, if that makes sense, to be doing those types of exercises. And I would suspect for the back surgery, hang on, I'm just going to get a little air in here, probably more appropriate to start in a seated position. A lot of times when you're dealing with back or hip surgery, you're not in a position to actually stand on the machine yet. But you can get a lot of benefit just from keeping those legs conditioned. You're spending so much more time seated, and they're going to be doing a lot of the work once you do start standing. And you still gotta get up and go to the bathroom and make lunch. And so as much as you're not supposed to bear weight, you are, and just keeping those legs and giving them a little bit of attention can help expedite that recovery. Red light, of course, there's no reason to never use red light unless your doctor has advised otherwise. If you're dealing with drugs that maybe make you more photosensitive, if you have fair skin and light therapy is something that has its own contraindications. But for the situation that you're talking about with, I'd love to see while you're sitting there, having it on that area. Infrared is going to be a little bit more effective at going deeper. Red light is a little bit more on the skin surface and just below towards where that layer of lymph vessels. So red light is good for stimulating lymphatic movement, skin surface conditions. Your lymph vessels are just below the skin surface. But when you're trying to get deeper into the muscle, the spine, maybe you're looking at the organs, infrared is going to penetrate a little bit deeper. So I would make sure whatever, I think most of the red light therapies you have, Dolores, incorporate both. Make sure that you're using the infrared as well as the red light. The red light's going to help with the scarring, that type of thing, the lesion on the skin surface, whereas the infrared is going to go a little deeper and expedite the tissue healing and maybe mitigate a bit of that scar tissue development. I hope that makes sense. For those of you that may have joined after, I was trying to be proactive girl today, and I put some links earlier on. I'm hoping that they come through. One of them was a link to a blog article about vibration plates for exercise and therapy. The other one was a link to my list, not Life Pro's list. Contraindications are not universal. They are not black and white. Just like if you go to a gym and you hire 3 different trainers, guess what? They're going to have 3 different do's and don'ts and 3 different approaches based on their experience and their background. I am bringing more experience to the table than most people on both vertical and oscillating plates. One is not better than the other. For those of you that are manufacturers out there or salespeople of these machines, I'm getting really tired of the whole fear mongering. This machine's better than that machine. It makes it hard for members here and for those of you looking at machines to make an educated decision. And I don't want anyone making a decision that's based on fear. There is nothing to fear on either side of the technology. but I will state and stand behind my opinion. 90% of people using a vibration machine prefer oscillating movement over true vertical. It's just less invasive. It's less buzzy. Your teeth aren't chattering. And in my experience as a trainer, there's more room to adapt and grow with an oscillating plate because of the amplitude options and the settings. The number one reason I prefer oscillating over vertical is not because of the reasons I've just stated, but it hands down offers an advantage when it comes to balance and stability, which is probably the number one reason a lot of my pediatric and my seniors are using the machines. So Dolores, when I said oscillating for your situation, I want you getting functional as quick as possible. You're not just dealing with a spine issue. We'd have to do a whole session just on Dolores and her issues one day. And she is so awesome at being willing to try and experiment. And I don't always get it right as a trainer either. Sometimes this isn't your fave or it's not the best for you, and we need to change and adapt what I'm offering as suggestions to make a good fit for you. So again, today was a little overwhelming. There's lots of things for you to understand, but make sure that you invest the time in understanding these things before you select a plate. I have a couple of very large Facebook groups. Many of you are members of them. One of my groups hit 10,000 this weekend. And the number one reason people join my group isn't to select to buy. They've bought a machine and they want help using it. Most people do the homework after you've made the purchasing decision. So there is no best, there is no worst, there is no this machine will hurt you, that machine will hurt you. If you're hearing those type of things from the people selling them to you, you need to speak elsewhere. Come to this VIP group, approach me. That's not how things should be sold in this world. And unfortunately, it's what contributes to the negative stigma of vibration. The term whole body vibration is not the best term in the occupational world when you're dealing with jackhammers and industrial equipment. But in the vibration machine world, I wish it would have been called anything other than whole body vibration. It does vibrate your whole body to a degree, but not in a harmful way. It's a completely different thing. And I recommend you please, if you're concerned about this aspect or your therapist has dismissed it because it's going to hurt you, they don't know what they're speaking about. And that first blog article should offer some insight. If you need some assistance, you know where to reach out. So thank you for those of you that have listened to me ramble for an hour today. I don't want to take up any more of your time unless I have more questions. I think I have covered them all today. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be here next week, same time, same place, Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm very excited. It's very much an info session next week on a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS. Many of the women in my group right now are going, that's me. So if that's a condition you've heard of, if you have it, if you're supporting someone with it, that's what next week's going to be about. I expect you to be here commenting and contributing to the awareness. And I'm going to give you some tips on some self-care ideas for managing symptoms when you're dealing with an EDS diagnosis. It is EDS Awareness Month. So thank you for joining me today. I'm going to put some of these common notes that I've created today into this event on both the main pages so you guys can find this later if you are sharing. Thank you for joining me today, guys. Have a great rest of your week. Like I said, if you're looking for mom, 15% off select items, I dropped a link. Go into the Life Pro website and see what is available there for you. You guys have a great rest of your week and enjoy Mother's Day when you do get to it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week and don't work too hard, but use your vibration plate consistently. Thanks so much for joining me today.